welcome back to the Scoreboard Sports Podcast. I am Connor Kendall. No Cameron Clark tonight. He is in Greensville, South Carolina. He is out there working FSY as a counselor, so we wish him the best. However, stay tuned. We may or may not have something special. He may or may not give some opinions, some thoughts on a couple of the topics tonight. So definitely stay tuned to hear that from Cam from abroad, from one of his many and many more to come adventures. So that'll be exciting. That'll be very interesting. Before we hop in tonight, before we get to the starting lineup, I just want to do a quick announcement. Cam and I have been talking. We have looked at some of the numbers recently from this channel, and we have made an executive decision, and we'll see if this plays out, how well it works out, but we've noticed that some of the audience, some of the analytics are not as great as we would hope. So going forward, we're going to try and shorten some of the videos to grab your attention and get you to stay in and tune in longer, and to not bore you to death as much, but get the facts out straight and quick. In addition to that, that will probably allow us to upload and get out more videos quicker. So we see it as a win-win. Hopefully it engages you and prompts you to stay tuned in and listen to the episodes, and hopefully like and share them with your friends, family, whoever. So with that being said, let's get into the starting lineup.
Your SBS starting lineup.
All right, number one on the lineup tonight, Jake Retzlaff situation. It has kind of died down a little bit. If I'm not mistaken, the last update we had, the case hadn't been dropped yet. As of today, the civil case has been dropped. So, according to both lawyers, or agreed upon by both lawyers, they agreed to drop it, and the case can no longer be picked up again in court. So that case, this situation is signed, sealed, delivered, gone, locked in a box, and thrown away the key. So that is great for Jake Retzlaff's situation. Along with all this, the BYU Honor Code office has apparently, and this hasn't been reported, it's been reported, it has not been confirmed, that he would, if he were to choose to stay at BYU, receive a 7-game suspension. Now, the interesting thing about that number is game number 7 on BYU's schedule this season is Utah. Home game against Utah. So that was game number 7. So that kind of seems like if Jake were to stay, a slap on the wrist, we are serious about this, and you will miss the most important game of the season. Now, the reason why I want to bring this topic up is because most of you that are listening have probably read and listened to many other people give their takes on the situation. One thing that a lot of media are not really discussing, which I find interesting. Now, they probably have obviously sources and reputable individuals giving them information, is the fact that there's, again, nothing has been confirmed. Jake Retzlaff was reported to have entered the transfer portal, but looking at numerous sources from X and other social media platforms, that he is yet to enter into the transfer portal still. I find that very interesting, because if I were Jake, and if all the rumors, if all the whisperings are true, and he wants to get out of BYU and go to another university to get a full season in, he would probably want to have put his name in by now so he could get out of there, get into practicing with his desired team to build that chemistry and prep for the upcoming season. So it rings a couple bells as to why that has not happened yet, why we have not heard anything from Jake directly at all through this entire process, through his entire legality process. We have not heard anything. Everything that has been said has come through his lawyer. So it is very, very weird, head scratching scenario. Now there were rumors, there were comments made that we should see a formal, I guess you could say, decision, statement on his decision. It's just a matter of time. They say that the news will come out that he's entered into the transfer portal. But we heard that last week. We heard last week that we would hear not only that he's in the transfer portal, that we would hear the school that he's going to. So I want to bring this up, but I also wanted to ask Cam. And from all the way from Greensville, South Carolina, at the campus of Furman University, home of the Paladins, we get to listen. We have the privilege, I should say, of hearing Cameron Clark's take on this scenario. So here you go.
Hey guys, I'm out here in Greenville, South Carolina, sharing some of my thoughts on stuff that Connor's been talking about. First of it being Jake Retzlaff situation. As you can see, I bought the new hat. Actually bought another hat out here, a Fenway Park hat. So Connor, I've officially got my Red Sox hat. I was visiting their single A team, their stadium. It was down in Greenville, so the Greenville Drive, which was pretty fun. I got to go to a Shoeless Joe Jackson museum. That was down here in Greenville too. So it was actually really cool. I've had a really cool weekend with sports, and just seeing some fun stuff from around the country. I almost got to go to the Braves game this weekend when they played the Orioles on Saturday, but we couldn't get the rental car to work, so I would have been able to catch another stadium off my list. But it was really cool learning more about Shoeless Joe Jackson. I just ordered a White Sox hat too because of that, so look for another hat coming up in a future episode. But representing Furman, Purple F. But anyways, with Jake, I think it's just a tough situation, especially when BYU doesn't want to, make a bigger deal than it already is, because BYU does have such high standards because they have the Honor Code Office. A large part of what the Honor Code Office does, at least from my understanding, is they want to deal with things privately. They don't want to make a big ruckus, a big deal about what, is going on. So much of, what members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints believe with things like that, that it is a private thing. It's a private thing between them, an ecclesiastical leader, and, deity, right? That it's not something that, should be broadcasted out to the public. But I think it's just such an unfortunate thing to happen for both individuals involved. That someone who submitted this report, right? Obviously has been hurt, and so that's a really horrible thing to have happen. But also with everything that's happened with Jake, just to have so much damage placed on his name for something that was dropped right after he decided to put his name in the portal. So just an unfortunate situation for both sides. But I think the reason there hasn't been much said is just because of they want to keep things private, and they want to keep things as low key as possible for Jake, for his family. Yeah, it's a tough situation. But I think they're handling it the way that it should be handled. I did see a report if Jake decides, this was before he announced he was transferring, and I don't know how accurate this is, but it's all we have to go off of at this point. And so it said he would serve a 7-game suspension, and so that would put him out until at least past the Utah game. So I could see that being, something, if he's only going to play, 5-6 games this year, if they make the Big 12 tournament, especially with it being his senior season. Why not transfer somewhere else and get that playing time, prove that you're an NFL talent, which I think he definitely has a shot to get drafted. And so I think it's in his best interest to transfer. As much as I love Jake, I've talked with him. He's such a great guy. He's just a phenomenal human being. If he wants to get to the next level, I think transferring would be a good decision for him, where he can get more playing time, because it is a ruling that BYU has placed, and not one sanctioned by the NCAA. And so I'm hoping all is well for him, and that things end up working out for Jake. We loved our BYU and are hoping for the best for him.
There you have it. That is Cameron Clark with his thoughts on the Jake Retzlaff scenario. I love Cam's thoughts on it, his take. He's right that I believe in Jake's best interest. It would probably be, if this suspension number is correct, if it is 7 games, that it would be in his best interest to leave the school to get the most playing time. However, I gotta think if the number is not 7, if it is maybe 5, for sure 4, I don't see why he doesn't come back. I don't see why he doesn't stay at BYU. I don't see any reason. You lose the 3 preseason games. If it is 5, you lose the 3 preseason games, which is nothing. I mean, you'll probably have better competition, better practice in prep for conference games with that defense. I don't know if Kalani would feel comfortable putting him against the first team defense, but all in all, playing against your own teammates, I think, would do better than those first 3 preseason games. But then he would miss the first 2 games of the conference season, which I believe, drawing a blank here, would be at Colorado and versus West Virginia. So that Colorado game is both West Virginia and Colorado. Those are both games that are kind of head scratchers in a way. Colorado with a new freshman quarterback, a lot of hype from him coming in from this off season. Not as much as Shador or Travis Hunter had, but nonetheless, I believe his name is who? I believe it's Dominique Ponder. I believe is the suspect, is the supposed to be the starting quarterback for the Buffs this season. So freshman quarterback with a team that had a very good season last year. Who knows how that will go. So that's a game that I probably ultimately will not worry about. Then you got West Virginia. West Virginia overall is a very scrappy team. I believe last year, I believe that was the game. I believe BYU won that game. I'm drawing a blank here. Their first season into the Big 12, they went down to Morgantown, and that was a game where, as BYU fans, we thought this is the game BYU needed to win to kind of turn the season around ultimately. And they got thumped in Morgantown. So West Virginia is a team that will always show out. They will always put their best foot forward. They will compete. So that, I think, is the biggest game out of that 5-game stretch to start, okay, now it's game time. Now we got to lock in. Other than that, if it is a 5-game suspension, which there's no reports, that's just my speculation, if it's less than 7, if I'm Jake and I'm committed, if I love BYU, if I love this university to extent, I mean, he did break the honor code, which I don't know if that reflects his love for the university or not, but if I love the fan base, if I want to be loyal and not cowardly run away when something goes wrong in my situation, then I'm taking the 5 games and I'm coming back and playing. Because you then get an Arizona team the next week with your potential first week back, and then you got Utah at home. I mean, this great warm-up game against Arizona, and then you got the rivalry. What better game to come back to have a very good, full, hard, competitive game than the rivalry. So, those are just my thoughts on the topic. I'm sure there'll be so many more things that will either get leaked or confirmed, hopefully, and we'll probably be right back to this talking about it. So, stay tuned for updates here on the SBS Podcast. Jumping to the next topic for today. There's 2 topics I want to go through and get Cam's takes on it first. I want him to give his opinions first. The Big 12 released their preseason awards, and it kind of got a lot of head scratchers from Cougar Nation and from that fan base up north. So we'll hear Cam's thoughts on those. In addition to The Athletic, they dropped a list of the top 100 college football rivalries. And BYU, Utah, the Holy War, wound up on the list, I would say, very, very low. I'll give my thoughts on both the preseason and the rivalry ranking after we hear from Cam.
As far as the Big 12 preseason polls, I haven't looked too far into it. Maybe I should have done that before I've been sharing my thoughts, but I'm actually really surprised that we don't see the likes of Jack Kelly and Isaiah Glasker on there. I think, they deserve to be on the All Big 12 team. Seeing Will Ferrin, I think he's definitely the best kicker in the conference, and Chase Roberts is one of the better wide receivers that we have. I think, I forget his name, but the receiver on Arizona State is probably the best. But I'd put Chase Roberts up there as well. I think they're taking into account probably a little bit the situation with Jake of not knowing, who the BYU quarterback is going to be, and knowing that it's not going to be Retzlaff for at least the first 7 games, if that report is accurate. But I think, especially with Utah as well, I haven't looked at it, but I fully expect Spencer Fano, is that his name? Utah has 2 offensive tackles that could very well be drafted in the top 10 this next year. And so I think, we're still waiting for Utah to show who they really are. I think having Devin Dampier this year will be really good for the Utes. He'll be able to bring them to a level that, we haven't seen since they joined the Big 12, which I know is only 1 year, but I'm excited for them to get back and get competitive again. I think that means well for BYU. But, that brings to The Athletic, right? It's, in my opinion, it's the greatest rivalry out west behind only Cal and Stanford. Maybe you could throw in UCLA and USC in there as well. But I think where you have a state with pro teams that aren't very good, you have the Salt Lake Bees who are last in the Pacific Coast League. You have the Jazz, who were last in the NBA. You have the Mammoth, who, vied for a playoff spot, but really weren't. They were eliminated with 5 games left in the season. You have Real Salt Lake, who at the beginning of the season wasn't doing great. I don't really follow them too much, but they're not doing too great. And so, college sports is what, the people of Utah, have to love. And I think, the rivalry has gotten a little bit out of hand, but I think from a fan perspective, it's something that's so fun. It's something that's a highlight for the people in the state. And I think just because neither team had been in a power conference for so long, like together, that's probably why it's so far down on the list. But I think it should definitely be up there, maybe like a top 15 rivalry, especially for college football. I think as we see BYU start to recruit better, that you'll see more and more, of similar levels of talent on each team. So I think that'll be really good. And I'm excited to see what the future holds for the Holy War, for the Deseret Duel, as they used to call it. But out here representing the Furman Paladins in Greenville, South Carolina. I'll catch you guys sometime soon.
There's Cam's take on the preseason awards, the preseason poll, and the athletics rankings of the top rivalries in college football. I'll take a little hit on the preseason awards. To Cam's credit, he threw out the names of Spencer Fano. He is on the offensive side for the preseason, Big 12 on the O-line, as well as Caleb Lomu, another Ute on that very good Utah offensive line. That is probably the strongest suit of their offense this year. In addition, Devin Dampier is projected to become the newcomer of the year for the conference. I have my own thoughts, honestly, when it comes to Dampier. I think it would be a very fun discussion when Cam gets back to have that with him. So I'll leave that there. I have my own thoughts on Dampier and his abilities and what he could bring to Utah. But to look at the offense a little closely, to hit home a little bit, Chase Roberts is on one of the 3 wide receivers noted. Cam also noted Jordan Tyson from Arizona State. He kind of forgot his name there. Jordan Tyson, if it's not Chase Roberts, it's Jordan Tyson for the best receiver in the conference, hands down. Those two will fight tooth and nail for. If it was just one receiver spot for all conference, it would come down to those two. So I think they hit the nail on the head on those two guys for sure. And then Will Farron for place kicker on the offensive side as well. Again, there probably isn't a better kicker, definitely in the Big 12, if not the nation, than Will Farron. He has ice in his veins. He is Mr. Consistent. You can always count on him. He will not miss. I mean, you put him, 44 yards out, Holy War on the line, and he just bangs that through. Yeah, no sweat, no worries with his game this upcoming year. I would not be surprised if he is a kicker taken into the draft, depending on his performance, depending on the yardage of kicks that he has this upcoming season. Now, to hit on the defensive side, there have been a lot of comments and a lot of frustration with this preseason defensive team. Now, to zoom in on the linebackers, like Cam mentioned, Isaiah Glasker, Jack Kelly, not noted whatsoever. The linebackers that were noted, Jacob Rodriguez, Texas Tech, which he should be on there. He is going to be one of the top linebackers in the conference, hands down, no doubt. The other two, that's where we can debate. Austin Romaine, K-State, and then Keaton Thomas out of Baylor. One's a redshirt junior, one's just a flat-out junior. I don't know how, as Big 12 media voting in these players, how you can look at last season, see Isaiah Glasker, who was the leading, I don't want to say he was the leading tackler in the conference, but he was the top tackling linebacker, and I believe he also had the most sacks for a linebacker with, I want to say 7.5. Last year, he had 70 total tackles, 42 solo, 3.5 sacks. Again, he was the leading tackler in the Big 12. I believe Jack Kelly had the most sacks for a linebacker in the Big 12. 5 sacks on the year last year. I could be out of the Big 12. I think there was an individual that had 7.5 sacks, but I believe Jack Kelly was the top, if not one of the top, if not the top linebacker with the most sacks. So to snub one of those two guys is outrageous. And not to mention on the defensive line, when you have Keanu Tanavasu coming in, who was a menace for Utah last year, and to snub him, to not even consider him, is mind-blowing. So that is a section that I hope Kalani and Jay Hill drive into the heads of the defense and say, hey, you guys were the number one defense in the Big 12 last year. You guys showed out when no one thought you could. Now, you would think that this year they would reward you for last year's performance. Well, guess what? They didn't. They actually think you will kind of be worse. You will not provide a season like you did last year. Last year was just a fluke. Let's go out and prove them wrong. Like, it is ridiculous. And the Big 12 kind of went away from preseason predictions as far as teams as a whole and where they will finish in the season, because last year was laughable. I mean, the team that was thought to finish last in Arizona State finished 16th in the conference, won the conference. BYU, who was thought to finish 12th in the conference, finished 3rd in the conference. So that was embarrassing for the Big 12 and their media, so they got rid of that. Well, this isn't much better. This preseason all-conference shenanigans is not great. Now, Offensive Player of the Year is Sam Levitt right now. That is not. I don't hate that. I think that's a pretty good bet. And then same with Defensive Player of the Year and Jacob Rodriguez, linebacker with Texas Tech. So that's my 2 cents on the preseason. Now, let me tell you about this athletic ranking mumbo jumbo. Holy War ranks at 28th. Now, if you're not huge and devout into college football, you'll probably think, yeah, that can make sense. I mean, 2 Utah schools, where you have all these Eastern, bigger Western schools and their rivalries, you'll probably think, yeah, that makes sense. When you look at some of the rivalries that went above BYU-Utah, it's laughable. Now, I'm not saying BYU is like a top 3 rivalry, but I'll make the argument that's a top 5. I for sure think it's a top 10. There's no way. I don't think it is any worse than Miami-Florida State. Quite frankly, that rivalry has kind of been dead for years. There's been no traction in that rivalry whatsoever. Historically, yeah, great rivalry. But hey, look at BYU-Utah. Great historically, and has been consistent throughout its history. Now, of course, in every rivalry, there will be games where there's blowouts, where there's streaks. The fact that the last 10, 15 games, 11 to 12 of those games have been like one-score games. That's a rivalry. That is what makes a rivalry. If I were to pick and if I were to re-rank some of these rivalries, some of these bigger ones, in my top 10, I would put Michigan Ohio State. I can agree that is the top. That is the big dogs. That is the big game. Number 2, they have Auburn, Alabama. I can accept that one just for the fact that in the years past, just a couple years past, that has been the game. And I think that has probably the most memorable, maybe not even just rivalry moment, but most memorable college football moment in a long while, if not ever, in the Kick Six. Now, number 3, they have Oklahoma, Texas, Red River rivalry. That one has kind of been lackluster, I feel like, as of late. But I honestly have no problem with it being in the top 5. Now, we got Army, Navy. Yes, that is the top 5 rivalry. Now, this is where I feel like I can put BYU in. Is it somewhere in this top 10. At number 5, they have USC Notre Dame. I think that is probably it's a good rivalry, but in the sense of that it has a long history. But it just doesn't do it for me. I don't think it is that highly regarded as a great rivalry. It has history, but it's not great. Coming in at number 6 is Nebraska, Oklahoma. Don't like that one. Get that one out of here. Thought that one out. Miami, Florida State. I talked about that one. Again, good rivalry and makes sense. It's better than a couple of the last two. The last two, it's better than those two, for sure. Ohio State, Penn State. I don't see it as it's a rivalry, but I see it as just a really good college football game. Because I'm not even sure they play every year. Now, again, BYU Utah doesn't play every year, or hasn't in the past. But those good rivalries have periods where they played every single year. Now, I'm not a Ohio State fan. I'm not a Penn State fan. I don't really follow the Big Ten that closely. So I can't give a very firm opinion on whether it is a rivalry or not, but I ultimately think BYU Utah is better than that one. Florida State, I think that's a good one. That one can stay in the top 10. That one's number 9. Now number 10, Minnesota, Wisconsin. What are we doing here? That may have history, but I have never, when rivalry has come around, I have never really seen that on the board, nor have I ever wanted to tune into a Minnesota-Wisconsin football game. Nor did I ever think, I have not seen any advertisement for it, a game like that, ever. So that one I think is dog crap. Get that one out of here. Now these next 4 to 5, these are really good, but they're not as good as some of the previous, because we're gonna repeat a couple teams here. Alabama, Tennessee, great rivalry, not better than the Iron Bowl, so I think it should go a little deeper into the list. Georgia, Florida, that's a great rivalry. Bump that into the top 10. Alabama, LSU, that one I think is better than Alabama, Tennessee, so I have it jump that rivalry. And then next we have USC, UCLA. Great rivalry, history, interstate, get into the top 10. Now, I'm throwing BYU, Utah definitely in the top 10. I'm keeping Michigan, Ohio State number 1, Auburn, Alabama number 2, Oklahoma, Texas number 3, Army, Navy 4. Keeping that. I will then probably move Alabama, LSU to 5. Florida State number 6, USC, UCLA 7, BYU, Utah 8. Miami, Florida State 9, and then Alabama, Tennessee number 10. I think just blindly right now, not taking a whole lot of consideration into it, that is my top 10. Now, I would have no problem putting BYU Utah into a top 5 scenario. If I really dug deep into it, I think I could convince myself to put them into it. But as of right now, I think they land in at around 8, 7, around there. But that is that. Now, to round out tonight's episode, we'll give a little update on some of the recent commitments to the BYU football program as of late. Just a couple hours ago, linebacker at Stillwater, Oklahoma. Now, apologies if I do not pronounce his name correctly. Nehemiah Cologne commits to BYU today. 5 hours ago, did a little live. He was bringing it down to Michigan State, which is very surprising, and hometown University, Oklahoma State, which is located in Stillwater. Now, a couple hours prior to his announcement, another linebacker out of Oklahoma as well, Braxton Lindsey commits to BYU. He did a little hezzy with Oklahoma, but then ultimately pulls out the big hat, big BYU hat, and is now a Cougar. I believe Braxton Lindsey was a 4-star, if I'm not mistaken, and Cologne was a 3-star. So those are two big gets for Jay Hill in that defense, and is just stacking up for the future. This defense is going to be unbelievable. BYU needs to make sure that they keep Jay Hill here for as long as possible. I believe there was a negotiation and contract extension, but I cannot express it enough. Once it gets to like 2 years to expiration, extend if you can. So, great work by Jay Hill. Great recruiting. We've gotten a great balance on both sides of the ball for these upcoming years. So it is great execution from BYU. I believe number 1 recruiting class in the Big 12 for next year, which is great. In the top 30 in the nation for sure. If I'm not mistaken. So great. We love to see it. Exciting things coming to Provo. So there you have it. That is tonight's episode. Make sure to tune in hopefully tomorrow or Wednesday. We'll do a little NBA breakdown, some MLB updates, and some NHL coverage as well. But that does it for me. I'm Connor Kendall, and thank you for tuning in for tonight's episode of the SBS Podcast.